So here we are in Richard Stanley's collection. He has some beautiful cars. That's Richard Stanley. And we'll be discussing the history of these cars and what the cars mean to him and his and the whole history from his father's truck and other cars that he's inherited. Welcome to Carmance Season 2, where we discuss the romance between car owners and their cars and their collections. Today we are interviewing Richard Stanley, who owns most of the cars in this room, in this collection. And tell us a little bit about yourself, your family.
Well, I grew up with in a family that had lots of cars and trucks, and my father kind of gave me the bug about cars when I was at an early age. And when I was a teenager and in my 20s and 30s even, I drove nothing but used cars. I've had about 5 of these cars, 5 64 Cadillacs that I used to drive in the 1980s. That's my daily drivers, including 3 Eldorados. This is the 3rd Eldorado.
Tell us a little bit about your education.
Oh, I have a bachelor's degree in political science. I was going to go to law school and chickened out instead and went to photography school at Rochester Institute of Technology. I have a master's degree in photography. And I ended up, after a series of jobs when everything else failed, ended up selling real estate. So I'm a realtor locally here in the Los Silver Lake area.
And you have family, wife, children?
No, I have no kids, no family. I'm a widower.
Okay.
So these are my kids.
Right, these are children.
A 1928 Lasalle Roadster. There were about 1,100, 1,200 made, and there are about 5 or 6 that I know of in the world. And this one is the original color, which is called Lorraine Blue. And I've owned it for about 20-some years. And every nut and bolt came apart on this car. It's all been restored. The mileage is about 40-some thousand miles, original miles. I'm the 4th owner. And it's one of the few cars that you can drive in the Miglia, which is the Italian road race, rally that they have now. Because when the car was new, it actually did race in the Miglia and won 1st and 3rd in 1927 and 1928.
So this car was in Italy?
No, one like it.
The Mille Miglia in the United States?
In Italy. Italy, when this car was new, they took 4 of them, and with Italian teams, and raced them in 27 and 28, and they won 1st and 3rd in their class.
Wow.
Which was pretty impressive in the day. The car is important because it was Harley Earl's first design for General Motors, and it's the first professionally designed series production automobile in the history of the automobile.
And this was a bright color for that time.
Yes, Harley Earl loved bright colors. The car is unusual in that it has the 6-wire wheels. It's completely Lorraine blue instead of having black fenders. In these particular models, you could have 3 tones with usually black fender sets and chassis. But this one has a special order. It was about $3,000 new in 1928, which was a pretty.
That was a fortune.
Which was expensive.
Yeah.
It was made by Cadillac, and it has all the options on it, including the searchlight, which is right in front of you there.
So this was more expensive than some of the Cadillacs at that time, maybe. Even though it was the lower line.
The lower line Cadillacs. This particular model, the way it's tricked out, may have sold for more than the Cadillacs, some of the low-line Cadillacs. Although the intention was that it would fill a price gap between Buick and Cadillac.
Right.
So they wouldn't lose customers to Packard, which had a model that was more in between there than this.
Right, right. Tell us about the fold-down windshield.
This was a Harley Earl specialty, and it was something he designed for Fleetwood and was known as a Harley Earl windshield. And in some cases I've seen it referred to as that. And I always drive it like this. And then of course you always want to have, if I have them here, the gloves and the helmet and the goggles. Which I don't know whether I have it in here or not.
And we have the seat belts here for safety.
Oh yeah, definitely. I put seat belts in.
And this is a trunk.
This is a real aftermarket trunk, a genuine aftermarket trunk.
But it came with the brackets?
Yeah, the trunk rack was part of what they all had. The other thing that's kind of unusual is that the pinstripe is silver leaf.
Oh.
From the factory. And I have the build sheet.
So when you restored this car, did you put new silver leaf? Yes.
Yes. And I also have the goggles. You got to have these. It'll blow your eyelids off if you have the thing down.
Those are fancy. And those gloves are quite nice.
The gauntlet.
Yeah.
And the helmet.
Beautiful. So you look like a pilot when you're driving this one.
Now, the Al Smith, you're a New Yorker.
Yes.
And you probably remember Al Smith as having, these are original bumper stickers, if you will, but they're license plate, little accessory license plates. And Al Smith ran for president against Herbert Hoover and lost. Maybe it was good that he lost. You know, if you're going to be president, it wasn't the best time, the best
exactly
4 years to be in the White House. But some of the other things, all of the bright work is nickel. The next year they had chrome. This was the last year of nickel, and has a rumble seat, of course.
Yeah, let's see how the rumble seat works. The funny part is the young policemen on the streets nowadays, when they see someone driving in a rumble seat, they pull them over. They think they're sitting in the trunk. The young cops never heard of it, never saw it, and they don't know.
That's funny. If you look on the side, you'll see the door on the side, which is the golf bag door. And
right, this was for all the fancy owners who belonged to golf clubs.
And I had the original, I have it hidden, but I have the original floor mat made, replicated in rubber, of course. It's very Art Deco.
And then you're covering it with the rubber mat to keep
just
it.
For protection.
Yeah.
Because that's it. That's the only one in the world, probably. And the car is very heavy to drive. It's not that much fun. This is the compartment for the side curtains.
Okay. Oh, that's right. There's no roll-up windows. So
And I got to know the woman who was the widow of the second owner, who bought it in 1933 for probably about $295.
Right.
And because the car was worth about 10% 5 years later, and with the depreciation of the Depression. So, you know, her husband was a true rocket scientist for Lockheed.
Oh.
And
wow.
They kept the car forever in their garage in Sherman Oaks. It passed through 2 collectors before I bought it in 1999 and began the every nut and bolt restoration of it.
No, it's a beautiful car, and you did a good job.
It's a very special car. It's a museum piece.
Definitely, but it's fun to drive it around.
It's fun to a point. It's not the easiest car to drive. The steering is very, very heavy.
Well, we call it Armstrong power steering.
That's exactly what it is. Hershey one time, and drove it up from where I grew up, which is about 42 miles from Hershey. And it was a beautiful autumn day, about 50 degrees, and I'll tell you, you needed the helmet, the goggle, and the gauntlets.
Right.
But I drove it in. When I drove it in, I had a matching leather jacket, and I had a couple of people on the overpass yelled, "I like your style."
Right. They appreciate it.
Sort of made that for me.
So tell us a little bit about the history of the car.
Well, what I got to know through knowing the original owners, or the second owner rather, the second owner's widow, Doris Bell. She was in her late 80s when I met her, and I traced her down through public records, and she was living in Sherman Oaks in an apartment at that time, and she told me that one of the reasons they got rid of the car was that they were afraid it would get stolen again. It had been somehow stolen out of their garage, and when they went down to claim the car in the impound lot, they weren't convinced that they were the owners because the last license plate, which I have over there, was from 1943. So the car had never been registered or put on the road from 1943 until about 2003 when I finished the restoration. And when I asked Doris, I said, "Well, why did you put it away?" And she said, "Well, they wouldn't believe us at the ration board that the car got 8 miles per gallon." So they couldn't, even with his, and he had the original windshield had, I have a picture of it here. Doris Bell with the 1943 license plates. This was the car when I bought it. Her husband had sprayed it a beige color, and his mother said, "You turned the bluebird of happiness into a mud hen." But it had originally a B ration sticker on the windshield from World War II, but then they got an A when they wouldn't believe that the car got 8 miles per gallon.
Okay.
So this was a picture of it. They took it camping on Thanksgiving 1939 because this car, with its higher road clearance, made light work of the dirt roads that his father knew because his father was a mining engineer. And here are some pictures of the build sheet from Cadillac, which traces all the details, the color and the color scheme and the silver leaf pinstripes and so on. The Lasalle was quite a car. The advertising was quite beautiful. Let me show you.
This is a great book you constructed.
Yeah, Harley Earl, as you can see, loved bright colors: yellow, orange, purple, greens, and then the restoration photos. The car was was the pace car for the 1927 Indianapolis 500.
This particular one?
One like it.
One like it, yes.
Yeah, there are only 5 or 6, as I mentioned, in the world.
Right.
And here's a picture of Harley Earl in his version of my car.
Wow.
When he came back, he had a special order one to drive around Los Angeles. Here they are at the debut. This car, by the way, was the first major car debuted in Los Angeles. It was the day before it was debuted in Boston. The Lasalle, the 303 Lasalle. 303s were built simultaneously as 1928s and 27s throughout calendar year 1928. But then they took the Indianapolis car back to Detroit and ran it, put a different gear in it, and ran it at speeds up to 100, almost 100 miles an hour. And it ran 951 miles at an average speed over 90 miles an hour before an oil line broke. So it went 2 miles an hour slower average speed than the Duesenberg that won the Indianapolis that paced over about twice the distance.
That's very impressive.
Yeah, so it was quite a hot car. There's the original color through the in the firewall, and when we took the car apart, everything was painted Lorraine blue.
How long did the restoration take?
Too long. About 4 years.
Wow.
So my father died in 2013. I bought the truck out of the estate and brought it out to California and did a cosmetic update, as well as put in a new engine, and I added power steering, brakes, and air conditioning, which tweaked up the cosmetics on the truck. It was his paint job. My father bought the truck new in 1955. The color is mountain green, and he drove this truck from the time he bought it in his 20s until he died in his 80s. It was sort of a local fixture in Shillington, Pennsylvania, where I grew up.
Now, have you brought this car to any shows?
Yes, I've taken it to the Ford show down at Buena Park, and I think people liked it a lot. It's they're popular cars, or trucks, the 53 through 56. This is a 55.
Okay.
And I put the original lettering on it with the original 1955 phone number, which was the Reading, Pennsylvania interchange 72731, which was the phone number that I disconnected after he died. The later iteration of it. And I put in the stake bed side rails here. These are in lieu of the 2x4s that he had. This was his work truck. He was a well driller. And then I put in the tonneau. I had the tonneau cover made instead of the World War II Army tent. And I'm just looking at this.
So your father used surplus World War II Army material from the tent?
For the tent, yeah. He was Pennsylvania Dutch, very thrifty. And I put in I registered it in California with the year manufacturer commercial plate, which are hard to find.
Oh.
And I put the little red devil on in his honor. And
excellent.
In the front, there's a little topper, license topper that commemorates the Pennsylvania Turnpike of that era, which didn't run all the way from New Jersey to Ohio. It just ran from basically Harrisburg to Carlisle. This is a photograph that my father took. Let me grab this. Of the pickup truck and some of our neighbors in 1956. I have a feeling that this is Easter 1956, because I would be about 5 on here. And there's the truck when it had the original 1955 telephone number on it, which I put back onto the truck, which I'll show you in a moment. But the Shakespeares had at this time a 55 Chrysler New Yorker that I remember going to the Reading fair. I grew up in Pennsylvania, near Reading, Pennsylvania, in Shillington. And anyway, so when I found this strip, I thought it was a nice trio, a triptych, and I printed it up as that. And here are some other pictures of my dad in the truck. And when he was probably, when this picture was taken, he was probably about the age of the way he looked when these photographs were taken when I was a little kid. This is a 1966 Corvette Convertible, and it's rated, the mid-year C2 Corvettes, as they're known, were rated in Automobile Magazine a while back as the coolest cars ever made. And everybody loves this car. It is an original black car, which is rare. This was the least popular color in 1966, black. The most popular was a blue, and then a red, and then a white.
Did they still call it Nassau Blue at that time?
I think it might have been that color. This is Tuxedo Black, I believe. And it has, pardon me, it has all the options on it, which are good and bad. It doesn't have a 4-speed. It has the Power Glide 2-speed automatic. I call it a secretary special. It has leather, power windows, AM, FM, power steering, power brakes, the 280 or 327 rather, and it also has the headrests that I put in.
Yeah, because they didn't have headrests back then.
Yeah, actually, it was a first year option in '66, and it has the teak wheel and the gold striped tires, which were optional, and the knockoff wheels. It's a 327.
Did it have fuel injection?
No, fuel injection last year for that was in '65.
Yeah, they
This
realized
was the
it
first
was.
year for the big block, so called. So and I found out some of the history of the car. It has the original black plate, California plate, and I found out when it was sold. Twice actually, in about 1970 something, and then again in 1980 something, based on the license plate number, looking it up in the LA Times under the ads. So it was unusual. I hired a guy and he actually found it. He did the research. It was well worth a couple $100 it cost me.
Sure. Now, is the car still registered under these same plates?
Yeah, it's never had another set of plates on it.
Wow.
And the license plate, the car was sold at Harry Mann in on Crenshaw Boulevard in LA, which was the largest Corvette dealer at the time. And the license plate frames like that are worth more than the set of plates. Okay. This one I bought about a year ago. It's an original condition, original paint, and 23,000 mile original car that I bought in Michigan. It had been originally sold. I found the original dealer in Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania, and spoke to him. The original dealer's niece took this car to her graduation in '87, her high school graduation. And it has an unusual dashboard that lights up like a video game.
It's a digital dash.
And I bought this car because in 1987 I worked for Kramer Motors in Santa Monica, and nobody was buying Chevys in those days. So they had one of these, a twin to this car, sitting on the showroom floor. And I had plenty of time to waste sitting in it and daydreaming about it. So when I saw one come up in that condition, in this condition, I decided after a long agonizing consideration to buy the car and have it shipped out. It has the headlights, of course, that rotate up, and it's loaded. It's got automatic temperature control, the sports seats, original upholstery, an original top, and drives like it looks. All my cars drive the way they look.
Yeah, it looks brand new.
So this car is a 1965 Chevelle Malibu Super Sport convertible. I'm the second owner. I was bought new by a friend of mine who, when she died, she left me the car. And I did a restoration on it. I did rebuilt the engine. It's sort of similar to the Corvette, the '66 Corvette, in that it has the this is a 283 engine with power steering, power brakes, air conditioning, power windows. And again, the black color was hard to get at that time. She liked all her cars black, and everything was black and white with Lily. Her name was Lily Fonda, and she was an amazing woman who was the head costume maker at Western Costume. And
So tell us about the original owner of this car.
The original owner was a amazing woman named Lily Fonda, who was a friend of mine. She was the head costume maker at Western Costume and a Holocaust survivor. She and her family were living in Vienna at the time of the Hitler takeover of Austria. And her father was the stockbroker for the Bank of Austria. And he fled the country on skis into Switzerland and eventually made it to France, but France fell and he was trapped in Lyon and actually personally executed by Klaus Barbie. But she and her mother and brother made it to England, and she came from this, she was a teenager, I think she was about 19, and she had to start all over as a housemaid, basically. And after the war, she and her mother made it to California, and she became, she always was interested in clothing and costumes, and worked with designers. And she was the woman who, when somebody like Edith Head would do a sketch for Elizabeth Taylor, Lily would actually be the one who would make the costume and fit the costume to Elizabeth Taylor for a Western costume. But she was just a delightful person, and this was her car from new until she died in the 90s, pardon me. And she always liked things black and white. It has the original interior, which was white. When she owned it, it was black, but I think the dealer, she wanted a triple black car, and I think the dealer switched out the interior maybe from another car, so when I restored it, I made it black and white in her honor. And it has a very rare set of mag wheel covers, sort of Krager style wheel covers with the red striped tires. And on the back of the car, one of the details that a lot of people miss when they do the restoration of Malibus of this year is that they paint the Cove black. But on black cars, the Cove was painted silver.
So which part is the Cove?
It's the, here, I'll show you. This is the Cove here, this part.
Oh, I see.
And on all colors but black, it's black. But on black cars, it's silver.
Huh.
And these are the original plates. And I had the car restored when I bought it, or when I inherited it.
So what kind of relation did you have with her that she was
a good
generous?
friend. She was like a mother to me. I was very lucky to get to know her. She was really a darling woman.
Okay, so tell us about this.
This car is important to me because I remember the car when my grandparents bought it in 1954 because I got a spanking for running across the street. We lived at a dead end, and I remember my grandfather was at the wheel, and I came up to not even the belt line of the car, but I got a spanking for running across the street to him. Most of the paint is original paint. The beige or cream-colored top was painted by the dealer. And the reason that I own this car is because my grandparents, my grandfather stopped driving in 1957, and my father didn't like the way the car drove because the power steering wandered. And the thought that I have is that the original owner, my grandfather bought it technically as a used car in 1954, and the original owner complained about the power steering. And the car didn't track very well. My father never liked it, so when he gave it to me, I went through the steering and discovered that the drag link was defective and required the knuckle to be repressed down into the housing. Once we did that and put it back on the car drove beautifully. But
so the dealer didn't even know that when the car was new?
It was defective from the factory, I think.
Yeah, it's the old quality control at that time.
Yes, exactly. And I'll show you the under the hood. This car, I put factory air conditioning in it from the trunk unit of the air conditioning system. And when I was in college, I had a girlfriend who liked old cars too. And we went one time to a local junkyard near where I grew up. It was from Denver originally, and had this two-cylinder two-cylinder air conditioning compressor, which actually is from a milk truck.
Oh wow.
And the air conditioning works, when it works very well on this car. It really cools it down, and it's all from a trunk unit. If you want to come around the back, this is a little sheet that I put together that shows the trip out. I actually drove the car out from Pennsylvania in 1992.
Oh, all the way to California.
All the way to California.
Wow.
From near Philadelphia.
And it was without a vent?
Yeah, we had a little bit of power steering, groaning, and in Chicago when the weather got cold, because you have to use power steering fluid in this car, not transmission fluid. So I was able to suck out the old automatic transmission fluid and replace it with
the power steering
fluid, the correct fluid.
What color was it?
I think it was red.
Yeah.
The power steering fluid was clear. Transmission fluid was red. And so here I am. We're at the Four Corners at Walter P. Chrysler's childhood home. It was a great trip, and I made it, and the car is here to tell the tale.
Fabulous. And I'm sure it's very comfortable.
It is. It's a big cruiser. I've taken it, pardon me, to the Academy Awards. And also, when the car was new, there's a 235 horsepower little badge there that we believe was made for this car in 1954 as a dealer promotional plate to promote the fact that the car had the highest horsepower and was the fastest production sedan in the world in 1954 because of the Hemi engine.
Oh, so this was a Hemi engine?
Yes, this is a Hemi.
Had to be like what, the second year they had it?
I think it's the third. I think they brought the Hemi out in '51. And this car, though, has a 4-barrel and dual exhausts from new stock.
So how much do you think this one was when it was brand new?
Probably over $4,000.
Yeah.
With factory air, probably close to $5,000.
Right, and here's the vent in the back
that's what
parcel
shoots,
shelf.
That shoots the air back up over the headlight.
And the people's neck would be frozen.
Maybe.
Yeah,
I've never
people
sat back there with the air on.
Yeah, the people always complain. They're sitting back there, their neck gets frozen. Oh, and you got stereo speakers?
No, those are vent air return
Oh,
vents.
okay. Very nice. Yeah, it's like
And the little grill here is
on the sides.
Air-conditioned cars only, the air temp intake grill.
Yeah, and so it's a real intake. It's not
Yeah, it's functional.
right functional.
Sedan body. And it was a 1938 Cadillac 60 Special. And they made about 3,600 of them, but they almost didn't make the car at all. I'll swing around behind you here. Because the car was built originally as a Lasalle, but they weren't able to build the car for the price of the Lasalle, so they had to make it a Cadillac. And this car was is notable because it initiated the 3-box styling. As if you look at the Buick over there, it's much more of a two-box sort of style, but this car has convertible style doors. The glass rolls up and down inside the track here. And it has the Fleetwood interior. I just have it covered over here, but it has the Fleetwood cloth and leather style, Series 75 style trimming. It was the first year for 3 on the Tree. And roller blind in the back. Need some help, Jim? And this car influenced everything, including the Silver Cloud Rolls Royce. But this is 1938, not in the 50s.
That's true. This had very advanced styling for 1938. And the Art Deco dashboard.
Yes. It's very much an art moderne, Art Deco kind of car. Most cars look like a 1938.
Yeah, this is a 1938 Buick.
This is a 37.
37 Buick.
But they had that sort of bustle back.
On the divided window in the back.
This is not my car.
Right, this is
a very nice example.
This is another club member's car, which he did a beautiful job in his own video of the history of Buick and the history of this car.
1964 Cadillac Eldorado convertible. And it has the original paint, original top, original interior. It has about 53,000 miles on it. And I'm the second owner.
And it drives like a Cadillac.
It drives beautifully. I've taken this car to Pebble Beach, and not to show, but to drive it up there. And
well, that's at least a, 5-hour drive?
Oh yeah, easily. It's probably the best preserved example of 1870 that were made.
So it's a rare car.
It is. It has no fender skirts, so it was the only model that had lacked the fender skirts on the side, and has the body molding on the bottom, the rocker molding.
And has the residual fins.
Yes. It's the last year for the fin.
It's a beautiful car.
New at Hillcrest Motors in Beverly Hills. And my friend Marion Stewart owned it until she died, and then I inherited the car. So there are a lot of cars here that I have sentimental value to me from friends that passed them on to me.
That's fantastic. We should all be that lucky to inherit such nice cars, but of course, no one wants to lose good friends.
She was an amazing woman, too. This car is a 1964 Ford Fairlane Coupe that my father bought new, that I remember driving around in as a kid. And
did you take your driving lessons on this car?
No, actually I didn't. I think I took my driver's test on a station wagon that my mother owned. But I redid the interior and the original fabric. And
it's beautiful. This is so colorful and nicely designed back then, as opposed to the current model cars that are
so plain.
Very plain.
And this car has a 260 V8 with a 2-barrel carburetor and no power steering or brakes, and it just sips gas. You can get 24 miles a gallon in this car.
Wow. I wonder why they didn't put power steering.
It was an option. My dad was a truck driver right after the war when he got out of the service, and he was used to driving cars without power steering.
So he ordered this new then?
I don't know that he ordered it. I think he just sort of bought it off the lot.
Yeah, nice chrome trim, stainless steel.
And aluminum.
So it's the Fairlane 500.
It has the optional sport wheel covers.